So what we're going to do with this toolkit is we're talking about curve fitting an exponential function. So really what we're talking about is given 2 points, being able to write the exponential equation for those 2 points. I'm going to actually do this 2 different ways. I'm going to follow what the toolkit says and show you one way, but then I'm also going to do a toolkit on the back of this that is more like I showed you how to do problem 91 and 95. So really what they ask you to do in this toolkit is they really want us to write both of these, use both points to write an equation in exponential notation. So in this case, we know the x and the y, not the a and the b. So we know that 14 equals a times b to the second power. And then we also know that 112 equals a times b to the 5th power. Again, I got my 14 and my 2 from this point right here. I got my 5 and my 112 from this second point right here. Then if you look, it says rewrite both equations in a equals form. That means I want to solve this equation for a. So if I divide both sides by b squared, I find out that a equals 14 over b squared. And on this one, I get 112 divided by b to the 5th equals a. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take those 2 equations. They both equal a, so we can use substitution method, and we can set them equal to each other. So 14 over b squared equals 112 over b to the 5th. So I have a proportion. So since I have a proportion, I can actually cross multiply. So I'm going to do 14 times b to the 5th and 112 times b squared. So I'm going to get 112 b squared equals 14 b to the 5th. So I want all my b's together. So what makes the most sense now is we're going to divide both sides by b squared. And it turns out that we have 112 equals 14 times b to the 3rd power. Well, I want b by itself. So we're going to divide both sides by 14. And so 112 divided by 14 equals 8. So 8 equals b to the 3rd power. If I take the cube root of both of these numbers, remember the cube root is saying what number multiplied by itself 3 times gives me 8? Well, that is 2. So we know that b is 2. So now I can take one of the original equations. I personally like to use the smaller numbers. So I'm going to use this 14 equals a, and we're going to plug in the 2, and we're going to square it. So we have that 14 equals 4 times a. We're going to divide both sides by 4. So 14 divided by 4 is 3.5, which equals a. So I know my a and I know my b, so I can rewrite that equation that we're looking for as y equals 3.5 times 2 to the x power. So that is one way that I can do this problem. I can also do this problem more like what I did with problem 95. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my 2 points down in a table. So I have 2 14 and 5 112. Remember, what I'm looking for is how many times do I have to multiply? How many times am I using my multiplier to get from 2 to 5? Well, I'm using my multiplier 3 times. So b times b times b, or b to the 3rd power. Right here, I'm going to take this value, I'm going to take that 112, and I'm going to divide it by 14. And 112 divided by 14 was 8. So b to the 3rd power is 8. Just like we did on the last problem, we're going to take the cube root of both of these. And we find out that b equals 2. So this actually, if you look at, I'm going to go ahead and uncover what we had done, I'm trying to show both at the same time. What you can see here is everything that I did up here, all the way down to there, I've done in a very short amount of time by looking at the problem slightly differently, which is why I've shown you this other way to do this problem. So I now know what B is. So I'm going to do it just like I did in that last problem. I'm looking for A now. So I'm going to take that point, 14 or 214. And I know 2 squared is 4. So we have 14 equals 4A. Divide both sides by 4. 3.5 equals A. So I can now write the equation that goes through those 2 points. This is just the same thing that I showed you how to do when you were writing the equation from the graph by setting it up in that table. The hardest part for a lot of students to understand is where this b cubed comes from. This b cubed is coming from the fact that we had to go from the second term to the third term to the fourth term to the fifth term. We had to go from the second to the fifth, so that took us multiplying it 3 times. This is grown 8 times, so that 8 times had to be split. How many times did we use the same number? What number did we use 3 times to get 8? So that is another way that you can do fitting the exponential curve or writing the equation of an exponential function given 2 points.